Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the After Hours show here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. It'll just be me and you guys today as we break down uh, the aftermath of what has been one roller coaster of a day from a reporting standpoint. Waking up this morning to the news that Texas head basketball coach Chris Beard had been arrested uh, and on strangulation charges, and all the way up until literally 30 minutes ago, uh, with the arrival of the arrest affidavit, the announcement from the University of Texas that Chris Beard has been indefinitely suspended without pay. Texas has a game. We'll take you right up until tip-off tonight, less than an hour away from tip-off over at the Moody Center. Rodney Terry will be the acting head coach, presumably the acting head coach for a while. I do want to mention, obviously, this show brought to you by RogueShop.com. Use promo code Orangebloods for Texas's home for CBD, THC, all the goodies that, quite frankly, should be in Santa's stockings this year. Those would be the stocking stuffers that give all year long. So we'll talk about, I hope that it's not just a conversation about Chris Beard's situation, although let's frame it for exactly what it is. It is, in terms of situations like this, it is a standalone moment in the history of the University of Texas athletic department. I mean, we can talk about the Bev Kearney things and sleeping with students and some of the things that have been alleged over the years that have led to dismissals. Obviously, you had a recent UT golf coach that was involved in pay for whatever that situation was officially known as. Like, there have been things that have happened. Nothing like this has ever happened. So, as we all pile in here and we marinate a little bit on the events of the day, like, I think there needs to be an acknowledgement that this is truly uncharted territory for the University of Texas athletic department as a whole. I've been covering Texas athletics since I worked in the athletic department SID office back in 1994, which makes me feel really old. But that's 28 years since I was 17 years old. And this is unprecedented. When we think about like where we go with this story, we'll outline the details of what's transpired. I find myself left with a couple of questions that I think we know the answers to, quite frankly. Right? I mean, I don't know that there are any hot takes that are needed tonight. My goal will certainly be to get through the next hour without saying something that'll end up over at orangebloods.com where it's like, did you see what Ketch said? Believe me. The last thing that I want to do on my Monday night after what has been a pretty long last 13 hours, I'm not trying to add to the day. 5 years from now, when I think back on whatever this story was the day that it broke, me getting in, like me saying something that ends up being stuff that gets me in trouble, I sometimes have been known to infuriate the Texas fan base. I feel like there are probably some of you. Sorry, I just got distracted. A little bit of breaking football news in the last 10 minutes or so. I'll just say that real quick. Junior Angelau in the portal officially. We will get to that in a little bit. So, in the history of college athletics, I've been trying to think about this since it was kind of first brought up in our Orange Blood Slack channel a couple of hours ago. Can anybody really remember a situation like this where a head coach at a major university, it's not that Chris Beard has been suddenly found himself in scandal, right? We've seen scandals before. I think about Bobby Petrino, or I think about I mean, my goodness, it's hard not to think about Rick Pitino on some level. We've seen coaches go through scandals before. Sometimes they even keep their jobs. I can't remember really any coach, but let alone someone on the level of Chris Beard being arrested for strangulation and ultimately what is allegations of really violent conduct. If you read the police report, and look, let's be clear when we talk about a police report, when we talk about an arrest affidavit, it is not necessarily what happened. It is what the alleged victim says what happened and ultimately what led to the arrest. The story kind of goes like this. According to the alleged victim, Chris Beard and his fiance, who they've been together for 6 years, have were having, sounds like a rough weekend. She describes in the arrest affidavit that they had been having issues for days. There is a disagreement. She knocks off his glasses. And then she describes that approximately 15 minutes later, matter of fact, I'm going straight to the affidavit just to make sure that there aren't any mistakes in how I present this. But she breaks his glasses. And then she goes back to the master bedroom after a period of approximately 10 or 15 minutes. She alleges that Chris Beard went into their bedroom and was upset about the broken glasses when she attempted to offer up a new pair of glasses that he could wear. While in their room and after being offered a pair of glasses, she stated that Chris slaps the glasses she was wearing off his face or off her face. First obvious no right there. In fact, I won't be overly emphatic, but if all this was she slapped some glasses off her face, that would be bad. I suppose there could be a debate that I hope nobody wants to have about whether something like that would be enough or not to make a guy lose his job, be indefinitely suspended. But you're borderline on some real nefarious behavior at that point. She states that they were lying upright in bed. She attempted to retrieve her glasses, at which time she was thrown by Christopher from the bed onto the floor. Again, starting to get into now we're into throwing. She says she was looking to gather her belongings. She was unable to see without her glasses, at which point, while she's trying to gather her belongings, she alleges that Chris Beard walks behind her and puts his arm around her throat and chokes her. She then demonstrated that it was like an arm over the throat. She couldn't move or do anything at all. After being choked, she describes that Chris threw her onto the bed and moved his face within inches of her face. When asked what it was that made Christopher stop, she said, I don't know. He just let go. Among the alleged injuries, a bite mark to her right forearm, visible with marks and redness. This is in the affidavit. Abrasion to her right eyebrow and temple area. Abrasion/scrape to her left leg from her knee to her foot. And then a cut to her left thumb with dried blood. It's not good. And so I'll go back to now having gone through what's alleged in the police affidavit. When has anything like this ever happened? And then the coach is put on indefinite suspension. And look, I asked this question somewhat rhetorically because I haven't been able to think of any situations like this. So when I say, when's the last time we've seen a situation like this occur? maybe there's a little bit of an Elmo shrug here. Like, if there is no situation, then maybe there's nothing to completely compare this to. I don't know where he comes back from this. A coach with his name recognition and stature, alleged of what's been alleged of him. He's now indefinitely suspended. When have we ever really seen that type of situation end up with he comes back to his job and assumes his duties as he assumed them before? When we talk about where this thing goes and where it ends, I can't help but be left with the notion in my head that the suggestion that he would come back and take over his duties as head men's basketball coach at the University of Texas, I don't know where there are many stories that we can point to and say, remember when that happened? Surely he can come back. Look at what happened here. This is new territory. It is a national story. It will gain more attention, I think, over time. And I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't see a way back for Chris Beard. I suppose the way back, if there was one, what he says in the police affidavit, in the arrest affidavit, he tells the police officers that he has an audio of the incident when asked, that would apparently frame what they've been told from her as a different type of situation. They ask, can we see the audio? He says no. I suppose if there's audio that completely vindicates him and paints the alleged victim in a new light, that would be the way, I suppose. Anything short of that, though, I don't know how long the university has. This is an interesting question. I haven't really given it a lot of thought, but how long does Texas have? Because this has never really happened before, it's a difficult story to kind of walk your way through. So the university has suspended him indefinitely. And like I said, in the coming days, we're surely going to hear different things. We will hear from Chris Beard at some point beyond a statement. Obviously, he will speak at some point. But barring evidence that shows that he's completely innocent of what he's been alleged of, it's really hard to imagine a world where he comes back from this. The police report is damning. Even if she doesn't want to press charges, we're now in a position where we've seen what was alleged on the night of, and when asked why she called the police in the first place, because he left the house after this confrontation occurred, alleged confrontation. She mentions in the police report that she was scared for her safety. There's a lot to absorb here. But at the end of the day, if you just ask some common sense Q&A inside your own head, it's hard to find examples of situations remotely close to anything like this that ends up with Chris Beard being the head basketball coach at Texas again. This isn't me giving some sort of like hot take. This isn't me Skip Bayless in it with Shannon Sharp earlier today. Like this isn't hot take stuff. This is just thinking about the reality of the situation. If you're asking me for my opinion, because there's no question I've been quite vocal really for as long as I can remember, as long as I've had a voice that people would listen to, if even a little bit. I've always been very strong against abusers of any shape, form, or fashion. I am anti-abuser. And I'm really pro, let's be considerate of the alleged victim until there's reasons to suggest that she's anything other than a victim. My personal opinion is if this happens, you fire Chris Beard. There's more to it than there's just a lot of nuance to this. Again, we may eventually see a situation where the fiance says, I don't want to press charges. I don't want to cooperate. I've changed my mind. That, I think, helps Chris Beard to some extent with the law. But the University of Texas as a whole, barring a complete denial that any of this happened, you know, it's kind of, I don't know if my facial expressions give it away or not. It's inconceivable on some level, like where we're headed with this. Because even if charges are dropped tomorrow, no, you know, there's not enough evidence. The alleged victim isn't cooperating, doesn't want to cooperate. They want to get married. They want to just move on. It's going to be very hard at this point to get a conviction. So charges are dropped. Even if that happens tomorrow, the genie's out of the bottle on this. I mean, Chris Beard will never be able to coach another basketball game where there aren't pictures of his mugshot in the opposing fan section. Like, you know, that should he, I think even if he's not coaching the rest of the year, you'll see that. Texas will go to Oklahoma for their first conference game at the end of this year. I think 18, 19 days away. I mean, we all know what that looks like. They're playing Rice tonight in basketball. If this game were at Rice and the Mob, the band for Rice, it's almost crazy. It's scary to think about like what they might have pulled off. And look, maybe, I don't even know if Rice is bringing its band to the game tonight, but we know how that thing goes down. Like I said, the genie's out of the bottle on this. It becomes very difficult for Texas from a management standpoint to ever get people to forget that their head basketball coach has been alleged to have assaulted violently his fiance. There are questions of bites, throws on beds, off of beds, onto beds, choking. He's, you know, we get to the point where him slapping her glasses off her face, allegedly, is kind of down the list of this list of things that have allegedly happened. So I have a hard time thinking that Chris Beard comes back from this. I'll take your questions. I'll look at some stuff in, you know, the chat, and we'll go back and forth on this a little bit. This is a landmark day in the history of the University of Texas Athletic Department. How they respond to this will be remembered. And they're already taking a little bit of heat from people who are like, why did it take so long? He's arrested. It gets out on the internet at 7 a.m. A statement's not issued until just before 5 o'clock. I need to go back and look. I think, what time did I get the email from UT? 45 minutes ago. So after 5 o'clock, if you do the math, a little bit after 5:30, the announcement from the University of Texas comes out, which, by the way, I'll read you the statement. The university takes matters of interpersonal violence involving members of its community seriously. Given the information available, the university has suspended Chris Beard from his position as head coach of men's basketball and will withhold his pay until further notice. Associate head coach Rodney Terry will serve as acting head coach for tonight's game against Rice. We'll see where it goes. Again, I said this earlier in the day, like, if true, if as quite frankly, as if there's legitimacy to the police affidavit, and look, I will certainly leave the door open that all of this could be untrue. However, you know, if you take the police affidavit seriously, and I do, it's hard to see a situation where Chris Beard keeps his job, and let's just keep it a buck, right? It's hard to make a case that he would deserve to keep his job. You eliminate the confirmation bias on this and the fact that for most of the people watching this video, he's their basketball coach. He's the dream basketball coach in the history of the University of Texas. In a lot of ways, it feels like Texas basketball has been waiting for Chris Beard its entire life. They've just opened up a new building. They've got the number 7 team in the country. It's a legitimate Final Four team. Recruiting is going incredibly well. I mean, the basketball program up until today, the last 18 hours or so, has been humming along at a historically good level. If you eliminate the fact that we watch the basketball team on, we'll watch it 30-something times this season, and you become closer to the players, you become closer to the coaches, you want them to do well, you root for their success, we're fans. You eliminate all of the confirmation bias, and you read the police report, and you suggest vaguely that this is a head coach at any sport, men's or women's, anywhere in the country. What do we think happens in this situation? And you assume he gets fired. And you assume it'd be really tough for him to ever really, he or she, to have a job similar to the position that they have currently if we eliminate the confirmation bias and just say, hey, we read this police report. This is what's being alleged of Coach X at school A, regardless of how big of a program it is, how notable the coach is. If we're just looking at the details that we have so far, if we're all being honest, it becomes very difficult to imagine a scenario where it doesn't end with that person's eventual removal of the program. I think that's where we're headed. Unless Chris Beard can provide evidence that reveals him to be innocent, reveals that the charges alleged of him aren't true, barring a complete turnaround, I think, in what the public perception of this is going to be with some evidence, Chris Beard has a tough road to climb in terms of getting his job back. We shall see. We'll move the conversation a little bit here. I mean, well, let me look and see. Do I have any super chat questions? If you want to get your super chat question in, feel free to do so. We'll go over to football for just a little bit. We'll go back and forth on this. Like I'll take some questions. We'll go through some football matters. I've seen some Anthony Hill discussion in the chat. We'll talk about old Anthony. I'm going to take a quick drink. Just kind of get my throat from being dry. Yes, Junior Angelow just did hit the portal. WTF LOL from Brandon. Really shouldn't be a shock. Well, let's just go through this. Junior Angelow participated with senior day activities at the season finale. So he walked in terms of he's a grad transfer. He's going to graduate. He was treated as a senior. He's at Junior Angelow in a difficult position because should he have returned to the University of Texas, and I'm not completely sure that the door was wide open for him to do so, he would have had a hard time getting his job back. I mean, could he have gotten 100? First of all, there's no sure thing that he's 100% with the ACL injury that he suffered in August. By the time next August rolls around, take a look at Odell Beckham Jr. right now. He injured his knee, same injury essentially, 10 months ago. And there are questions about whether or not he'll actually be ready to 100% be available this season. He might not be available until 2023. One of the reasons why the Cowboys had a real difficult read of the situation is no way to really know. It might, 12 months on, he might just really at that point be available to start participating on some level, let alone being fully ready to go. So you'd have a situation where if he wanted to stay, it's tough for him to come back 100%. And it would be tough for him to win a job given that all of the interior spots have returning starters coming back. And a lot of these guys are young, right? We talk about Cole Hudson, or we talk about Hayden Connor, or we talk about DJ Campbell. These are guys that are only getting better. The problem for Junior Angelau is if he goes into the portal and goes to a new school, it's really tough to go into a new situation. And the moment you show up, you're wearing a red jersey in practice. You're not fully cleared. You might not completely be ready to go by the end of the season. Junior Angelau really found himself, and still does, I think, between a rock and a hard place. And this is a guy that's been a 3-year starter at Texas. He was a good, solid player coming into this season. On paper, he was the best player on the Texas offensive line coming into this season. I don't know what the portal outlook for him is going to look like. Again, I get that. I have had the sense that Texas needing his scholarship and knowing that he participated on senior day, none of this is a surprise for me. Furthermore, this might not be the last Texas offensive lineman who participated on senior day that could end up in the portal. I'm told that Christian Jones is a player that we might eventually see put his name into the portal. He could also go pro, but I don't get the sense that Christian Jones is coming back this next season at the University of Texas. As a matter of fact, that door has been closed. Hold on just a second. We'll see if me yelling at the dog just a little bit works. No, it didn't. Dog's back to barking. We'll see how that goes the rest of the show. Hey, Blake, tell me in the chat, can you hear the dog or not? If you can't hear the dog, I won't worry about it too much. But if you guys can hear the dog, it's going to drive me crazy for like the next. Okay, slightly. Well, the dog has stopped barking slightly for the moment, but we will continue. I don't expect Christian Jones to be back, and we might see where was it? Yeah, just a little hush, just a baby hush. Hey, dog, stop screaming, stop barking. As if, the thing is, that dog's like 5 pounds. It's my wife's dog, although I claim Luna too. But she's like 5 pounds. So when she barks, it's like a Muppet. Whereas we have a German Shepherd in the house. And if that dog barks, like we all know, okay, there's a big dog. So, it's weird. We have like a Mutt and Jeff kind of thing, except what is it, Lady and the Tramp? I don't know. They're both women. I don't know. Big dog, little dog is the way that I would look at it. So bottom line is, I think Christian Jones could also be a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if we get to the end of the month or even after the season. Maybe Christian Jones is going to play in the bowl game. So it's not going to happen before the bowl game, but maybe in January, we could see a situation where Christian Jones will either announce that he's just going to go to the NFL, or we could also see a situation where his name ends up in the portal. I'm not quite sure. I don't know that Christian Jones has exactly made a decision, but I have heard that he won't be back in Austin next year. So we'll see what's going on there. I don't see any more super chats. Anthony Hill. Let me see. Let me go back through the chat for a little bit. Somebody asked this weird question. Does this situation with Chris Beard hurt with Anthony Hill? That's when you know that you're really into recruiting, when you ask if a situation with another sport. That's how you know you want Anthony Hill. You want Anthony Hill so bad that you're worried that the situation with Chris Beard might impact the situation with Anthony Hill. No, I wouldn't worry about that. What's really interesting about the Anthony Hill situation is that I was told by somebody over the weekend. So one of the things that happened this weekend in the world of recruiting was that there's suggestion. Well, we know that Ryan Niblett, who's a top 10 prospect in the state and a guy that I have stood on the table for as a guy that I think is a national top 50 prospect. He visits Houston this weekend. We know that Samaje Burrell, who is a linebacker commitment, who I'm also a big fan of and think could be, I don't want to say a day one starter, but a day one contributor when you look at the depth and the lack of personnel that exist on paper. Even in a world where Anthony Hill's a Texas Longhorn, the Texas linebacking core needs a complete makeover outside of the return of Jalen Ford, who, by the way, third team AP All-American today. So shout out to Jalen Ford for doing that. It's a huge accomplishment. And then you've got Dylan Spencer. You've got three prospects that the Longhorns are committed to the Texas. Sorry, I've got like a million things going on here. And they all are looking at the University of Houston on some level. I was told this weekend that make no mistakes whatsoever, like they want Ryan Niblett. No question. Of those three players that I mentioned, Niblett is a guy they absolutely want. Samaje Burrell and Dylan Spencer are guys that, while as much as I have them rated really highly, Niblett is the guy that they would really want to fight for. I got the sense in talking to somebody earlier today that if Burrell or Spencer peeled off, they'd make it work. To me, the thing that stands out about that commentary that was told to me by a source earlier today, if you don't get Anthony Hill, Samaje Burrell is a really important player in this class. The fact that they would potentially have a little bit of a laissez-faire attitude towards his visiting Houston, I think speaks to how confident they have to be about Anthony Hill. Because if you don't think you're getting Anthony Hill, I think Samaje Burrell is your best linebacker commitment in this class. With all due respect to Darian Gillette, who I might think that way if he weren't coming off of a major injury. So Burrell, for me, is an important prospect in this class at a key position. If I'm hearing that, if he comes to Texas, he comes to Texas. If he doesn't, he doesn't. If you got that kind of attitude, then they have to really feel good about where they are with Anthony Hill. Because if you miss on Anthony Hill, and then you also lose Samaje Burrell, you're left with two linebackers in this class, potentially with Leona Lefay, I always mess up that name, and then Darian Gillette as your only two guys in a linebacker class where you need three times that many guys. This needs to be a four-man linebacker class, and oh, by the way, be able to go into the portal and potentially get somebody there that can help out like they did a season ago when they brought in Tucker Dorsey. So I would continue to tell people that Anthony Hill is looking pretty good for the Longhorns. Pretty good. I know Texas A&M has got some confidence there, but I'm talking about what we see. And, oh, by the way, we reported earlier today, man, my throat, that Steve Sarkisian will go in home with Anthony Hill on Thursday. It's not a make or break day, I don't think. I don't think it's a day for infamy, but it is when Steve Sarkisian will go in home. And, we're almost at a resolution. We're not that far away from signing day. And I think one of the things that we're talking about portal, I think January is going to be the time for the Longhorns in the portal, because with all of their needs, right? They need, other than a punter, which there's no punter that they need to scare off. And I would assume that they'll get a commitment soon from the Stanford punter that visits over the weekend. I have to believe that Ryan Sanborn is going to be a Longhorn when it's all said and done. Other than punter, if you wanted a wide receiver, You don't want to be scaring away Ryan Niblett, but you don't want anything happening with Jonte Cook. You don't want to go after a linebacker in the portal and Anthony Hill flinch a little bit. Oh, you told me that I was going to be the starter, and then now you're going after guys in the portal. You don't want to do anything that's going to impact somebody at that level. So I think you're going to see Texas get through signing day. I think you'll wait to see after the bowl games. I think you'll see that Texas is in a position where they'll go after a few guys. But I don't know that we're going to see a lot of portal action before then. Somebody asked me a buy or sell question for my 10 thoughts from the weekend yesterday. If I thought Texas by the end of this week, if there was an over and under of 5, would I take the over in terms of offers and no names in the portal that the Longhorns are targeting? I would take the under on that. And I think Texas, and I'm also hearing that Texas has some intel on players who aren't yet in the portal that Texas will be very interested once they go into the portal. I think one of those is absolutely a wide receiver. And I had been hearing a lot of Kentucky's Berrien Brown more than a month ago. Now I'm hearing that I haven't been given any names, probably because on some level Berrien Brown's name got out. But I get the sense that Texas has some interest, and it's been conveyed through the handlers or agents or runners or whoever is working on behalf of these players. All have somebody. I think Texas has some intel about guys who will eventually enter the portal, and I think these are players they'll be very interested in bringing in. Chris through the super chat asks, what up, Catch? What up, Chris? Do you think we keep Devon Campbell? I've been wondering if he doesn't make the starting lineup in the spring, will he hit the portal? He ain't going anywhere. I don't believe. Campbell, very likely for me as a starter this year. I don't see, there's just, in my mind, there's no, I guess I shouldn't say there's no way, but I think it's very unlikely that Devon Campbell, aka DJ Campbell, enters the portal this spring. I think there are other guys in that recruiting class potentially that, well, look, here's the golden rule on what to look for at the transfer portal. You look for guys who are A, not starting or not on the 2 deep. B, is their pathway to starting completely blocked? C, is that player from out of state? D, all of the above. Campbell's starting, I think, although I guess we got to wait and see. I know that there was some suggestion by Sarkisian a couple of weeks ago that Cole Hudson would be ready for the bowl game. We'll see. Maybe it was an ankle injury and not the worst that was originally feared. But I think Devon Campbell will or Devin will stay exactly where he is. Not anticipating that. Let's see. What else do we have? Working man, I think, conveys what I'm thinking. He will leave for Texas for the NFL eventually. Yes, kind of what I'm thinking. Jason brings up this point. He wants to see Cam Williams get on the field. I think one of the real interesting components of this bowl game is these coaches are going to want to win the game, first and foremost. The game starts getting young kids. This isn't Rice. This isn't preseason, non-conference. This is a bowl game. They want to win it. But if we kind of go position by position, is there a world where Malik Murphy gets into this game at all? Because there have been conversations behind the scenes that the coaches kind of know that there needs to be a battle at the quarterback position. That, by the way, I have not yet seen this. Let me update Twitter real quick with regards to the Mike Leach situation. Obviously, that thing has been trending really in a bad position for a long way. I had not seen actually Bill Snyder, of all people, kind of strange, acknowledges and tweeted about the death of his good friend and special man, Mike Leach. I mean, rest in peace, Coach Leach. He's certainly been a guy that everybody that would be watching this show, a fan of the University of Texas, someone who covers the Big 12, obviously he would be a guy that's been out in our lives for almost 20 plus years. I guess going back to when he would have been on Bob Stoops' original staff and then takes the Texas Tech job shortly after Bob Stoops originally took over Oklahoma way back in what, 1998? 99? Yeah, I think Stoops would have been a 99 guy. I'm trying to even remember that far back. God, what is there to say about Mike Leach other than one of the more unique and C. Jenkins 313 says, haven't seen any other reports, only the Bill Snyder tweet. Yeah, I haven't either. So, you know, on some level, you know, we run a fine line. He got a really major heart attack, it sounds like. And they're moving him towards like hospice care inside the hospital. I don't know if Bill Snyder jumps the gun at all by issuing his condolences on Twitter to Mike Leach. The situation seems pretty dire at this point. So even if, you know, I don't know. There's been no official release of the news that I've seen other than that Bill Snyder tweet. But I think, you know, I think we all know that Mike Leach is in a pretty bad way, and that whether the rest in peace comments are truly ready for the moment, or whether or not that's a little bit down the road, as in, I don't know, the next 24 hours. I mean, it sounds like it's a really bad situation with Mike Leach with regards to any possible recovery at all. It sounds unlikely of unlikely. But, you know, Mike Leach is a trailblazer in a lot of ways, an innovator in the world of college football with his offenses, a unique personality. I will always think of Mike Leach as the human being who triggered Texas A&M Aggies as much as anybody on the planet, and that includes myself. I mean, Mike Leach is the only head coach that I've ever known that talked about Texas A&M in terms of pirates and fake military, and like Leach went in on A&M all the time, and he beat Texas A&M. He often put his money where his mouth was, where his teams would beat Texas A&M after he ran smack on Texas A&M. An absolute wild card of a personality in college football. College football is not nearly as colorful with Mike Leach out of the game. This was a guy that would give you marriage advice if you asked. He's liable to talk about anything. I mean, he was someone in here, I think I saw in the chat, called him a nut. He was a character. And look, not all of it was good, right? I mean, he's a complicated coach. You did have the situation with Craig James and his son, and locking a guy in a garage or a shack or whatever that was, tool shed, I don't know. It was always something with Mike Leach, but really good football coach, was able historically during the tenure of his career to take the leftovers and the scholarship battles and win with them. And not everybody's able to say that. Maybe never. Danny says the janitor's closet. It was something. Yeah, I think that's right. Janitor's closet. You know, whether it's time to say rest in peace or just simply offer thoughts and prayers and well wishes, there's no getting around the fact that we talk about Mike Leach. We're talking about a unique person in the history of college football, college athletics. Let's see. Did I miss anything else from a question standpoint before that happened? By the way, we'll be wrapping it up fairly soon. We will be getting over, by the way, fascinating that Texas has a game tonight. It's around Christmas. They could, in theory, not have any games for like the whole week. Like, they got a game tonight against Rice. And Rodney Terry will be the head basketball coach. That game is being broadcasted by the Longhorn Network. How do you tackle this if you're the Longhorn Network? Because there's this scale of, you got to say something, but you don't want to say too much because, you know, you're the Longhorn Network. So you want to kind of North Korea the news a little bit, control it. So they'll come on almost certainly and acknowledge, you know, Chris Beard suspended indefinitely. He was arrested earlier today. Rodney Terry is the acting head coach. Like, they will say that. But in a broad, if this is on ESPN tonight, the conversation about Chris Beard and the totality of what the Texas basketball program is suddenly dealing with. I mean, you know, the alleged victim, I think, obviously front and center of where most of the concern needs to be tonight. But these basketball players, this isn't what they signed up for. And after tonight's game, they will win. Is Texas going to make the players available? Will the players be forced to answer questions about this situation? If they're not made available, it's the whole thing is strange. It's weird. We've never seen it quite like this before. I hope look, as a media member, generally speaking, make some players available. Like, it's news. And if there's a game today, we'll do that. But the shadow over the program and this situation is so monstrous that if this were a national broadcast, they would talk about it nonstop throughout the broadcast. Obviously, you don't expect that on the Longhorn Network, but if they don't talk about it at all, it will feel a little bit like the elephant in the room not completely being acknowledged. And it just makes the situation an uncomfortable one. Slightly, in the grand scheme of things, what the Longhorn Network says or reports on this isn't nearly as large as like the situation itself. We'll probably forget about it as soon as the game is over. But while we're watching it, this goes back to this whole situation. This is unique. And what happens from here is kind of a landmark moment in college athletics. Notable head coaches like Chris Beard don't have their careers sidetracked by incidents like this. So, in 5 years from now, it may be that we look back on this situation with Chris Beard and he's become a verb in the industry in general. If something like this should ever happen again, it is, potentially said of, oh, you pulled a Chris Beard. It's a bad situation. Danny asks, what's the over and under for games suspended? I don't think you can bring him back until there's some resolution. I mentioned this earlier today on the Monday Overreaction show. And by the way, I thought Anwar and I had a good show earlier today. It was before the police report came out. So, we had to straddle the lines of talking about the information that we knew at the time, along with the difficulty of not knowing more. But I thought it was a good conversation. If you missed the Monday Overreaction show and you get a chance to go back and look at that, I don't have a good answer for you, quite honestly, Danny. I do know this. It is also, there's another elephant in the room. And look, you want to talk about drums that I'm not going to beat tonight? I'm not going to mention it. I'm not going to pound on the Arterio Morris drum. But that was a situation that I already felt was really complicated. And I'm surprised that Texas didn't step in the way that it has with other situations like its kind involving student athletes before, which is UT's general principles on these types of situations with athletes is that you suspend them indefinitely and they don't come back until it's cleared up. You know, if it looks good legally, but it's still not completely put to bed, then it's not put to bed. That philosophy changed with the Arterio Morris situation, who will play tonight. That you have a head coach, and I just, again, look, man, I am not the one that's going to be beating the drum on the connections of this, but they're there. You do have a player on the roster right now who is in some shape, form, or fashion accused in the neighborhood of what the head basketball coach is accused of. Again, unprecedented times. And I'm looking at some of the comments in the chat. That's the thing, man. Like, there are all kinds of comments and jokes that are being made. And like, just none of it's funny to me. I'm exasperated by it more than anything else. This comment in the chat from I think Vivek. I agree with you, Catch on Morris. You know, Beard wanted to win at all costs and push for him to play. No, I don't know what Chris Beard wanted. Like, I can guess. It's one of the things I've been saying all day is like, let's be careful in assuming what we think we know, even in a situation like this. I mean, it could be that Chris Beard is motivated because he truly believes his player is innocent. And more than anything else, it was his conviction with Morris's innocence that was his driving thought, more so than winning at all costs. Now, look, you may be more right than I am, but like, I don't want to jump to conclusions about things we do. He hasn't addressed this. He hasn't told us what, because there are football players currently suspended under the same charges where, hey, it didn't matter. Time for you to take a time out. Ishmael Ibrahim is a perfect example of that. He is dealing with his own situation, and he was immediately suspended indefinitely until that situation is either cleared up or not cleared up. Almost at around the same time, and that was just a few months ago, that Morris wasn't treated as every other student athlete I've ever seen at the University of Texas was curious. I think, is weirdly more notable today. I don't know what happens with that, but again, this whole thing is crazy. This doesn't happen very often. What Chris Beard has allowed for himself and the program to be put in the position of is something that is new. So it's hard to predict what happens from here. When the hell has this ever happened anywhere? Let's see. Any final comments before we just move along and head on out towards the basketball game on the Longhorn Network at the top of the hour? Nick says, will Beard ever coach at a D1 school again? Probably. Yeah, absolutely. These things, if you can recruit and you're a good coach, nothing short of murder is probably too much for you to ever not be able to come back from. I mean, yes, he will. He will. Will it happen at Texas? My immediate opinion is no, but we'll see how this thing goes. Again, maybe there's something that can completely clear him from all of this. Maybe it's all one big, huge understanding. But I think he'll probably need a little bit of time off from the game if this thing goes, I don't know, according to plan. What does that mean? I don't know. Like, I don't know how this thing goes. But if you're asking me today, do I think Chris Beard ever coaches again, even if he did this? And I think the answer is absolutely. All right, look, on that note, oh God, Bill Snyder now reporting. I have not hit refresh on the Bill Snyder Twitter account. Come on, Coach. Come on, Coach Snyder. Yeah. And then there's a part of me that's like, Bill Snyder's an old man. What can I expect of him on Twitter? Anyway, it's been that kind of a day. Of course, today would be the day where Bill Snyder, of all people, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the Art Briles tweet. Yeah, Art Briles may be, but think about what we're like. Those are the type of examples of it's like, well, that's the thing. And people have tried with Art Briles. So anyway, I've been on live for over 2 hours today. I'm gonna go chill out a little bit. I'm gonna get off of well, no, I'm not. I'm gonna go watch Texas basketball. And I'm gonna go see if I can keep this dog from barking at whatever's going on in the background. Alex on Twitter, Olds on Twitter. Yes, exactly. What can my expectation of Bill Snyder be on Twitter? I'm surprised he knew how to tweet. There's a part of me that's like, there's no way Bill Snyder tweeted that. An assistant or a grandchild tweeted that out under his deal, thinking, all right, look, for myself and Blake and all of you that hung in there today, go watch some basketball, have a good rest of the night, try to get a good night's sleep, use some of that Rogue product. I promise you, tonight is a gummy night. Tonight, I'll take a couple of gummies right before I put my head on a pillow, and I will sleep like the soundest sleeping baby you've ever seen in your life. So go to rogueshop.com, take advantage of the Orangebloods discount, get those Christmas stocking stuffers today while you still can. That being said, somebody jumps in, you're watching Monday Night Football. Hey, man, I feel you. You know what I might do? I might go watch the White Lotus season finale for a second time and just be entertained because, man, that was entertaining. All right. You guys have a great rest of the night.